C-Red Nation, what is good? It's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. We've got the episode of trades. Paul George trade, Brandon Ingram trade, Donovan Mitchell trade. Are any of these realistic for the Chicago Bulls? And what would it take to pull something like that off? All that and more in today's episode of Locked On Bulls. Let's go.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am Pat the Designer, host of Locked On Bulls and host of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily, and of course, the Chicago Bears podcast. It's a lot harder to do the fist pump thing when it's just you by yourself. But we do want to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play Store. All right, guys. So today I want to talk about some trades that are being floated out there that are I don't know if they're gaining serious legs here, right? But like that, it seems like if you were going to shake things up and trade some of the bigger name pieces that the Bulls have on this team, that you might want to see the Bulls go after. I want to start this off with Paul George. Paul George, of course, after another interesting playoff loss, shall we say, after another. I mean, just a down season, right? It seems like there needs to be some level of change. Well, let me not say down season. Another down playoffs. Let me clarify. It seems like there needs to be some kind of change with this Clippers organization. And it seems like the Clippers might actually be ready for that change to come. And I wonder if that change could come in the form of one Paul George. Now, last season, Paul George putting up 22 points, 5 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists. Numbers definitely going the other direction a little bit here as he's getting older. Paul George right now in his age 36 or 34 season, I should say. And I mean, listen, 74 games played last year, which is a good chunk of games for Paul George. Remember, his time with the Clippers has been a little bit injury riddled. He's been a guy who's played 56 games, 31 games, and now 74 this year. But the one thing about Paul George that we can say that we couldn't say as much about Kawhi Leonard was Paul George was somebody who at least in the playoffs did show up. But this season, it seems like that's a little bit different. And so now it seems like, okay, are you more willing to try and move on from a guy like Paul George if you're the Clippers right now? And what would that take? Right now, Paul George making about $48 million. He's got a player option on that contract. I would not be surprised if he opts in to that player option, but could that be an opt-in to try and be traded somewhere else? And I think that's kind of where the Bulls may come in. Is this the year where Zach LaVine finally, after it seems like every single year we talk about this, can find his way to LA? Now, does that make things a little bit tougher? For sure. I mean, I think you have to figure out, of course, the financials on this team if you were to make a trade like that. Zach LaVine has to be the one going the other direction. And yeah, you are taking a little bit of a chance with a oft-injured player in Paul George right now. But realistically speaking, this is a one-year deal. It would be a deal that would allow the Bulls to open up some money heading into this 2025 season. And I think this version of Paul George might be one that you could actually look at with this young Chicago Bulls team and see some compliments, right? If you're sitting out there and you're running out a lineup that has Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White in it, if you're throwing Paul George back, right, I think that you're in a great situation with those three guys on the team together, because Paul George being allowed to play more of the older role player, kind of the DeMar DeRozan role, right? But not occupying the same spaces. The one thing that I do love about PG-13 from last season is that 8 3-pointers per game attempted, knocked that down at a 47% clip on the season. I'm sorry, a 41% clip on the season, shot 47% from the field overall. But Paul George is willing to operate in that 3-point territory. That could replace some of the 3-point shooting you're losing. The fact that you also have some of the size with Paul George as well. Like, I think that this wouldn't be a terrible move for the Chicago Bulls if they were to do something like this. It would definitely be a move to me that signals that you're trying to look for the long term. This is not a long-term move. This is a 1-year rental piece. We're trying to clear some money off of the books. PG have a season here, and we hope that we can win as much as possible. This allows AK to maintain that competitive mindset. This allows your young guys to still grow because you're not bringing in somebody that has to step in front of them. And I think that it's a move that also allows you to kind of say that kind of allows you to move on if you want to from DeMar DeRozan as well. You still have the savvy vet in the building that's going to be able to kind of give you that veteran leadership that you're looking for. But you've also got Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu who have kind of come into their own a little bit this season. And so now, if you can facilitate something else to try and, I wouldn't like to see DeMar DeRozan just walk for nothing. But if it comes down to just, hey, listen, we're not going to re-sign you. We're trying to take money off of the books, and you have to include a couple of pieces together to send Zach LaVine to LA. I wouldn't be surprised about Paul George coming back to Chicago just for the mindset of remaining competitive. And I think that's the thing with a lot of the players on this list that you'll see, right? When we're talking about what the Bulls do, I can't talk about any of these deals in the sense of, hey, the Bulls are going to bottom out after this and they're going to tank, right? The reason I bring up names like this is because I fully expect to see the Chicago Bulls, one, have to take basically the short end of a stick on a deal. And two, basically have to go out there and say, we understand kind of where we're at right now. We still want to be competitive, but we don't want to have long-term money tied on our books heading into next season. Now, does this make the most sense? I don't think so either, right? I'd rather you just let everybody, at this point, see what you can get for Zach LaVine. If you can get anything for him, you let everybody else walk. You deal with the young guys that you have on the team right now. You go out there. Your best case scenario is Kobe White is amazing. You maybe fall outside the lottery, you give the pick away, but Kobe White's amazing. So, you're not as upset about it because you've got a player right there that maybe you can build around. Or, right, he's the Kobe White that he is right now, where a little bit up and down, a little bit of inconsistency for a young player. And when you go get near the draft, you're probably not going to be in a situation where you're not a lottery team. And so now with that pick being lottery protected, you end up being in a great situation because you don't have to send your pick over to San Antonio. I think that would be the best case scenario for the Chicago Bulls overall if they were to do something. But unfortunately, that's not the GM we have, right? That's not who's running the show. The guy we have running the show wants to remain competitive. And so what do you do if you want to remain competitive? You go out and you get 1-year pieces. You go out and you get big name contracts. You go out and you get, right, like you match some of these names up here and say, okay, if you send me Zach LaVine and Andre Drummond, you re-sign him to a small money deal, I'll send you Paul George. Boom, here you go. We wash our hands of the whole thing and we call it a day. I would not be surprised by that at all because we know the mindset of AK. We know how AK wants to operate. And if you're talking about a 34-year-old Paul George, who's a name that's going to sell tickets, is going to get people in the seats, is going to keep people coming to the United Center, that's going to keep your team competitive, I don't think there's a better name on the list than Paul George right now. If you're just talking about being a competitive team, which unfortunately that's what AK is wanting to do. Hey, I want to know how you guys feel, though. Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page if you have not done so. Do you think a Paul George trade would be a good move for the Chicago Bulls? I'll be down there talking with you guys as well. As far as good, listen, good is a relative term. Would Paul George win? Yeah. If he's healthy, right? Would Paul George keep your team on the floor? Yes. Would Paul George help you defensively? Yes. Would Paul George help you with rebounding? Yes. He would help you with all this stuff. He's a really good basketball player. I don't know if you know this. Is that the answer long term? No. He's 34 years old. To be honest with you, this whole scenario is basically rehashing the DeMar DeRozan scenario with a different player. But what you're doing now in this case is you're able to move on from Zach LaVine's money. And so long term, you don't have to do that. But you're basically running back a similar team. You just got a guy that plays a little bit different. So at the end of the day, is this a good situation? Is it a bad trade? And I've said this many times. It would be a trade that wouldn't overwhelm me, wouldn't underwhelm me. I would be whelmed. I'd be more overwhelmed that we don't have the long-term money of Zach LaVine on our books. That would overwhelm me a little bit. But outside of that, yeah, you're talking about a guy that just be whelmed, basically. Let me know how you guys feel, like I said, in the comments below. Appreciate you guys tuning in and showing love as you always do. Before we get into talking about Brandon Ingram, though, we do have to tell you guys all about Yahoo Finance. Now, Yahoo Finance is right now one of our new sponsors on this podcast. And listen, wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investments and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you absolutely can. You can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt, your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of your financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools you need in order to help you reach the financial freedom that you are looking for. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, man. We appreciate you guys tuning in and showing love to another episode of Locked On Bulls. As you always do, member of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to keep our episode of trades going because this player actually does bring a little bit of intrigue into my mind. The next player on the list is Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram, to me, is a guy who you kind of look at it a little similar to Paul George, right? Like, I don't think that there's a ton of different talking points on Brandon Ingram, minus one thing: 26 years old. Now, Brandon Ingram is a player who played 64 games last season. That's a good number of games for BI. He's been somebody who's been, again, oft injured. 45 games season before, 55 games year before that, 61. He has never played 82 games in the season. The most he's even come close to playing 82 games in a season is his rookie year when he was 19 years old in LA. He's a guy that is gonna miss time. This is not a you hope something different is gonna happen. This is not a maybe there's a different outcome. Brandon Ingram will be injured. Okay. But in the situation that you're in right now, where, listen, we talked about moving Zach LaVine in that last segment. How many teams are really banging at the door to go get Zach? How many teams are dying to go get Zach LaVine? Let's be real on who the more valuable piece that people are looking to trade for is. And right now, that's that's DeMar DeRozan. More teams are interested in the possibility of a sign and trade with DeMar DeRozan, or some kind of sign and trade that maybe allows AC and DeMar to get somewhere, whatever it is. That is your more than likely scenario that I could see happening this offseason, because I just think it's going to be easier to move on from DeMar DeRozan than it is Zach LaVine, because people are going to look at the injury history and have some concerns. Now, you've got a young man in Brandon Ingram right now who scoring, okay, all right, 20 points a game, a little bit down for him, but coming into his final year of his deal, $36 million. Would you be interested in investing in him for 1 year on a short-term deal, kind of a prove-it deal where, listen, you look at it and go, we know what this guy can do. We know the talent that he has. I think that he's just kind of got lost in the sauce down there. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. When I look at BI's numbers, I don't even know how to, I don't even know how to explain it. It almost feels like BI is like the afterthought down there until they need somebody to absolutely go out and get a bucket. And then they go, oh, BI, we forgot you were here. How would a young lineup, if you were to do somewhat of a sign and trade here, where you get maybe a DeMar DeRozan sign and trade down to New Orleans. You pair him up with CJ McCollum. At this point, you're not worried about if he's going where he wants to go or if he wants to be happy, although he does have to sign with you. So there is that aspect of it as well. But, maybe they can move him from there. Or maybe there's just something for a change of scenery, right? Something for a change of scenery. That to me would be an interesting deal if you could create some kind of a difference in this core. That's what AK wanted to do. It wasn't about who was going to be different. He just wants a different look in this core. Could you see a core that has Kobe White, Io DeSumo, Zach LaVine maybe still here, and then Brandon Ingram? Brandon Ingram adding a ton of size. He's 6'8". I think size and shooting is something that Chicago Bulls could absolutely afford to add to their team. He's a 35% three-point shooter, not taking a ton of them either. He's only taking about 3 or 4 a game, although at his highest he was taking 6 a game. He was knocking that down at a 38-point clip, but he's kind of just become an afterthought there. I would almost say, would you be interested in bringing Brandon Ingram in on a 1-year trial deal to see if he could be a part of your core of the future that you're able to build something with? Right now, he's making $36 million. I think that would be tough with your cap. You'd have to figure something out where you're probably moving multiple pieces on that as well. Maybe Io DeSumo isn't here for that. Maybe that is something else that you're trading away there. But realistically speaking, you're talking about bringing back more of a younger piece on this core. Like I said, 26, Kobe White, 24 right now, right? So you're kind of matching up ages there. Zach LaVine's still in his 20s. If you have to ride this contract out, you want to have some kind of insurance on the other side. The part that makes this tough, though, the part that absolutely makes this tough, and I can see all the comments now, yeah, BI is great, but he's hurt. Yeah, BI is great, but he's always injured. That's what makes this tough, because if you're trading away a guy on a 1-year deal, who maybe you were going to let walk anyway, but if you're trading a guy on a 1-year deal, now you're talking about you've made this trade. BI comes in. BI's injured. Zach LaVine's injured. Kobe White is not good. Or Kobe White is just, the inconsistent how he was, or maybe he's a little bit, maybe hopefully he takes a step in the right direction, but there's just not enough talent on the team because now, right, BI's off, Zach's off, whatever it is. Again, I think that plays into your first scenario, though. Right. I can see people complaining about why BI wouldn't work here, but I think that plays into your first scenario and the first scenario I laid out where, listen, you run this out there, you hope it works. If it doesn't, you're a lottery team. You're a lottery team. That means you keep your lottery pick. You keep your lottery pick. That means you don't have to go into next season. You go into next season basically with a shot at Cooper Flag and a shot at a pick higher up in this draft that allows you to go out there and maybe add a piece that you feel is a long-term piece. I'm not saying that any of these moves, or at least either of these first 2 moves, are long-term moves. I am saying that these are moves that are going to keep you competitive if you were to make a trade like this. And at $36 million, I think that you could do a lot worse than a young Brandon Ingram, who is coming off one of his more played game seasons of his career. Now, again, he's a guy I know is going to be hurt. And maybe at this point, you're just running out the all-injured team, right? Because you got Zach LaVine. Lonzo Ball supposed to be back next season as well, and Brandon Ingram on the floor. My God, I can just see the injury reports now. But again, this is you going into a season where 2025 kind of needs to be, by the end of 2025 or by the end of the 2025 season, you kind of need to say, hey, listen, we know that this ain't it. And so we need to have some sort of reset. But again, what does AK want to do? Say it with me now. Stay competitive. So I think that this would be one to me where, if you got Brandon in here, I'd probably be more inclined to see this one play out, more inclined to see this one work. I think you can have more of a conversation on being over the salary cap, being over the luxury tax for having a Brandon Ingram on your team. I think that there's more of a conversation to be had there than just running back this same core. So if you were to get a deal done, I wouldn't be mad at that as well, right? Like I think there's a lot of things that work in the favor for this deal. It just kind of comes down to one thing. Who the heck are you going to trade for him? Is DeMar DeRozan going to do a sign and trade with you where he's going down to New Orleans to be with what? CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson playing the mentor in New Orleans for a year? I don't really see that being a likely scenario. And I think that's the one linchpin that makes this tough. But if AK can pull it off, I would love to see BI in a Chicago Bulls jersey. And I think that, maybe There's a part of me that believes there could be a resurgence of him. He's literally just become an afterthought down there. So there is a part of me that believes there could be a little bit of a resurgence with Brandon Ingram if he were to come to the Chicago Bulls. And listen, no matter what, you play well in Chicago, the spotlight's going to be bigger. People are going to love you more. And I think even if you brought him here on a trade, you maybe extend him. Brandon Ingram's a player that people would want. Yeah, I mean, there's always, he's still young. Yeah, he's got some injury issues. You don't got to pay him out of the backside, right? But like, I think that if you were to re-sign BI to a reasonable contract, he's a player that people will want. And so you could get an asset that people want to move by trading an asset that people want moved right now. So let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. I've been on to talk with you as well. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Before we get into this final topic where we talk about the Donovan Mitchell possibility of a trade, got to tell you guys all about Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is the game that is so addictive. You can't do anything about it right now. Listen, game off. Technical foul. We already talked about Monopoly Go, though, Pat. I know what you're saying. You already talked about it, but there's just so much good stuff going on in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together, build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you can unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers, cool new pieces that you can travel the board with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends or your family when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, in Monopoly Go, you can feel exciting. It can feel new because every day they are constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure, I should say, or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. All right, I think realistically we saved the best for last. There's a reason I ordered these guys this way, because the first two kind of just keep you competitive. This next one is interesting. And it's a name that's been floated around the Chicago Bulls for a while now. Not because he's dying to come to Chicago. Not because he's beating his chest to be a part of this organization. But he's in Cleveland. And so if he's in Cleveland, oh God, anything to get out of Cleveland. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I think that anything could even be Chicago if they came a knocking. Now, what would it take to get a deal like this done? This is another deal where you're kind of moving on from Zach LaVine and trying to send him over to the Cavaliers. And again, you have to see if they would want a person or a player with this kind of money deal with the injury history that he has in return. But if you feel that you are going to lose Donovan Mitchell for nothing, because Donovan Mitchell contract right now, he's got a player option. The feeling around many people in the league is that Donovan Mitchell is going to opt out of this deal, that he is going to leave $37 million on the table just to get the heck away from Cleveland. Ladies and gentlemen, how much do you have to hate a place for you to leave $37 million on the table? How much do you have to just be like, get me the heck out of here? And so this makes Cleveland a little bit desperate. Now, Cleveland in the playoffs right now, they end up getting through that first series, but there's one thing to me that clearly stands out. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland just aren't a great fit. Not that they're a bad fit, but they're not a great fit. You don't see those two cooking at the same time. It's kind of the same issue that they've had the entire time. And they've tried to work this out together for a while now, but I just think that realistically speaking, if you're looking at Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland together, you're trying to find something that pairs up better with them. And Isaac Okoro just isn't that piece for them, even though he is shooting his career high this year, finally kind of becoming that 3-and-D player they're looking for. But maybe they need something a little bit more. And I think that Zach LaVine is a guy that does fit in really well next to Darius Garland. Now, this again is a situation where Zach, you're on the move. You're not the guy. Darius Garland absolutely is the guy. He's the guy setting up the offense. He's the guy running the offense. He's the guy putting everybody in a position to go out there to be successful. You got to fall in line and figure out the name of the game for this new program. But again, it's something, and it's something that's locked up under contract. It's something that you can look at in Zach LaVine and say, you know what? He's going to be here for a while. He doesn't have a ton of options. He's kind of got to recreate his image in this league. He is a very talented scorer. And if he's not the focal point of everything, if he's not the, everything is built around him piece on this team, can we get more out of him? I think you could realistically. And so I don't think that a trade like this would be off the table. The tough part about a trade like this would be, would you be able to get something done to where Donovan Mitchell can, right, in a sign and trade scenario where Donovan Mitchell basically says, I want to be in Chicago more than just a year. At this point, you don't have, again, it very similar to the other deals, but this is a piece that I would like to see the Bulls try to get something long-term done with. Donovan Mitchell has really, really improved in efficiency over his time in Cleveland. I feel like he has become a much better player from the three-point line. I feel like he has become a much better player, more so for sure in the clutch. And I think that he's just been, he's matured a lot as a player. The only thing that scares me a little bit about trading for Donovan Mitchell is if you trade for Donovan Mitchell, you're building around two small players yet again, although Kobe not super small, right? But you're building around Donovan Mitchell, who's basically what? I mean, are we talking 6? They list him at 6'3". I'd say realistically 6'2-ish, 6'1", right? He's a little taller. He's not that much taller than Darius Garland, who's definitely 6'1". You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I get at. But you're building around him and Kobe White pretty much. Small ball lineup. Are you recreating kind of the same thing? Now, Kobe can play off ball a lot more. I think that it takes away some from Kobe, but you're getting a player in here in Donovan Mitchell who last season, you're talking about 26, basically 27 points a game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. He's an offensive focal point of your team. He would absolutely become a face here in Chicago. And he would be a major piece that the Chicago Bulls would then have to build around and have to figure some things out around. But I mean, like you're answering a lot of questions. Who's your big name player on the team that you need to fall back on and rely on? It could be Donovan Mitchell, and I would not be opposed to that. I think the one, but again, this is maybe me thinking too far out. How many small guards that you build around are champions? Maybe you say Steph Curry, which I would agree with, although Steph Curry a little bit bigger than Donovan Mitchell is. Maybe, I mean, you could throw Isaiah Thomas in there. You're talking about 2 guys, though. Is Donovan Mitchell on that level? And that's the part that's been yet to be seen. Now, really good player, can put a team on his back, can absolutely go to work, is phenomenal attacking the paint, has really improved as far as a three-point shooter. I think he's improved in the clutch a ton. I think what we're seeing in Cleveland is not on him. It's more so on the construction of the team. And not having Jared Allen out there does hurt you a little bit as well. What would hurt the Bulls most in this, though, is that there's so many players becoming available as far as free agents. Could you just see them kind of, I guess, could you just see Donovan Mitchell end up the Cleveland Cavaliers basically just say, we're willing to ride out a year and figure something out and make a trade for one of these other name guys who are also on 1-year deals who are out there as well, right? Could you see Donovan Mitchell to LA for Paul George, and you got to add something on top of the deal to make that work? Could you see Donovan Mitchell to New Orleans for a year, and you got to add something, right? Like I think that there's so many big name players that could be available right now that make this deal tough to get done before you get to a Zach LaVine. But I do think Zach LaVine's name could be in the mix in there, and I would love to see the Bulls go out and try and get something done with that. But hey, let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you as well. Do you think that any of these trades are realistic for the Chicago Bulls? And keeping in mind that the Bulls may be willing to take an L just to go out there and have a competitive season. I'm doing air quotes for the podcast people. Competitive season. Let me know in the comments below. As always, follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page if you have not done so, and we'll have another episode coming you guys' way tomorrow. Me and Hayes back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. See Red Nation. Stand up. Peace.